We will read from the Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 17. The Lord agrees to become Aditi's son. In the previous chapter, we had the Apayo Vrata sacrifice. Now I'm going to go back a minute and then we'll begin here. But first, some prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyanatimasha Gyana Gyana Chakshur Unmilitam Ye Taismai Shri Gurave Namaha. I pray that Lord Vishnu gives me a brain. Hare Krishna. So, to set the stage, in the previous chapter, Aditi was really feeling down. She was depressed. She's a mother of the demigods, illustrious lady, and her husband Kasyapa Muni, who was off meditating, came home, and when he saw his wife, he saw she was very morose, and these were ancient times, not modern times. So he did not offer her Prozac, which would be the normal way to handle it nowadays. Um, and not that some people don't need Prozac. I'm not saying there's something wrong with it, but in those days they tried to get a little deeper. So he said, "Oh, gentle one, I wonder what went wrong. Why are you feeling this way?" Um, uh, and it's very interesting what is said right after. Were you too much attached to members of your family and you failed to receive a guest? Um, uh, uh, what Sapa says, when I left home, were you so much anxiety you forgot to do your religious duties? Uh, Are all your sons faring well? I see your mind is not tranquil. How is this? Now, we see the same events occurring other times. For example, when Veda Vyas is compiling the Vedas, he's writing it all, and when he's done, he gets a very morose, and Narada Muni visits, said the same thing to him. What have you done wrong? Have you not received a guest properly? Have you insulted a woman? Have you done this, or that? What have you done to do this? And of course, what he had done wrong in that case is not give the essence of the Vedas, and therefore he wrote the Bhagavatam. But um, uh, and same thing happened to Arjuna when he was very morose. And again, the same questions: what have you done wrong? So when we're feeling morose, it's a real interesting lesson. Um, Moroseness is a time of reconsideration. It's an opportunity for us to go deeper. Um, in this very surcharged political world of America, um, where last night people were dancing on the streets, singing "The Wicked Witch is Dead" from The Wizard of Oz and things like that. People tried to be very happy because there's a change of president. And of course, the former president was uh, had his own areas of embarrassment, and the new president will come in and um, who knows what will happen. But many people I know were very depressed without discussing policies of the former president. They're leaving that entirely aside. Uh, 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 they were very upset because he was insulting to people. He was very, very insulting to people. He would call war heroes cowards, and he would call all of his opponents by nasty names, and he was very insulting. And intelligent people become very upset by these things. We don't want to see people insulted and mistreated. And again, this is a question that was asked of Kashyapa. Kashyapa asked Aditi, did you insult someone? Did you not receive a guest properly? The fact that receiving a guest comes in multiple stories in the Bhagavatam as a cause of depression is very, very important. In my own house, every time the mailman comes to my house, I ask him, would you like in the winter a hot drink, in the summer a cold drink? Sometimes he'll say yes, sometimes he says no. But and I got that from, fortunately, my grandmother was like that. Any guest that came to the house, even if it was somebody she disliked, and my grandmother certainly had dislikes, um, she would always receive them properly. And it's a very, receiving guests is saying something. What's it saying? It's saying we are seeing the divine within everybody. We understand there's a spark of the divine in you. May be covered, mine may be covered, but there's a spark of the divine in you, and I am worshiping that divine within you and accepting you as part of the divine. And so it's a critically important part of our culture that we receive guests. When Prabhupada received me, who was I? Nobody particular, but he made sure that I was comfortable. I had something to eat, gave me a sweet bowl immediately. These little gestures is how we win people over to our heart, because these gestures are not political gestures in which we're offering something to someone. Oh, I want something in return. Rather, we're saying, I am accepting you as part of Lord Krishna's divine plan. You've come into my life. What can I do? In other words, we're winning friends. One of the very powerful ways in which Radhanath Swami is so appreciated around the world is because he makes everyone feel important. Insignificant person, significant person. He's expert at making people feel important. Radhanath Swami said to me a couple of years ago, we have this funny relationship where I love it, where he gives me his Sankirtan scores when we meet up. And what are his Sankirtan scores? I think he gives them to me because I like hearing it so much. I mean, I'm in such ecstasy hearing it. So to make me happy, he gives me his Sankirtan scores. So he tells me I've been where he's been preaching and who he's been speaking to. Those are his Sankirtan scores. And I love it. So a couple of years ago, he came, well, Brahma, I said, Maharaj, so where you been? What you've done? He says, well, I've been on the bank of the Ganges. I've been on the bank of the Yamuna. And last week, I was at the Bank of England speaking. So he's been to all the various banks. And such a beautiful line. So anyway, I digress a little bit, but it's the importance of receiving guests, because we don't receive guests properly. That is a cause of depression. That was not a cause of Aditi's depression. Now, let's go look at depression some more. Let me see. I am going to see if I can do I have access to the poll?
I'm not sure, Prabhu, if our account is set up for a poll.
Oh, okay. So we can't do that. Okay. People can raise their hands if you know someone very close who's depressed. And I'll see who raises their hands. And in the, if you know how to raise your hand, if you look in the chat window, we can see there's a place to raise your hands. Yeah, we're seeing a bunch of hands going up. Ooh, so many. Okay, give everyone a moment. If you don't know how to raise your hands, if you click on participants on the bottom of your screen, then you'll see at the bottom of the list, or just click on your name, and then you can raise your hand. Just click on your name. Let's see, who else knows someone who's depressed? The answer should be everyone. But okay, we'll stop here and we'll lower all the hands. Because of the extreme political tension in America, I can hardly think of anybody who has slept well in recent times, who hasn't had it. If somebody was a supporter of the outgoing president, they're very depressed. He was the savior of America, they saw. And I didn't see it that way, but they did. He was a savior of America. And he was saving us from hordes of people coming across the border that were going to do horrible things to us. So they're depressed. And before that, everyone was the people who didn't like him, who thought he was quite a boorish person. They're very depressed. He could win again. Oh my. So almost everyone I know, I had two professors over my house last night. We're sitting in the backyard, socially distanced, discussing different matters of life. I do that regularly. And they were telling me how depressed they had been. And these are generally upbeat people. We can see it. My wife's a psychotherapist. We can see in her practice, people are home and they're stuck home. And the wife's realizing, boy, that guy I live with is a jerk. And the wife is realizing, the husband's realizing, I didn't realize my wife's such a creepy person, because they're stuck in their house for 8 months. And this is a silver lining of the COVID, because my wife's a psychotherapist that works with couples. I said to her, at least it's good for business. Okay, we'll put that aside. And people are struggling with relationships, are struggling with isolation, because we live in an age of total distraction. We have our cell phones, our social media, our televisions. Used to have movie theaters. That doesn't happen now. And we have so many things to distract us. There's unlimited sporting events going on. I noticed when all the sporting events shut down for COVID, I was curious what happened. So I asked, well, my folks I know are into sports. I said, what do you do? I mean, there was a baseball season, a basketball season, a football season, and there's always some overlap. So there's unlimited sports, boxing, and horrible sport to me, but it goes on. You had all, so what do you do? And what do you think they did? They watch reruns of old sports that they already know who won. I was thinking, this is, as Prabhupada would say, chewing the chewed. You already know who won. You already know what happened. There's no thrill that is my team going to win or the other team going to win. When I was a kid, in New York, we would go, I was 10 years old. We go to baseball games, and somebody wanted the Mets to win, and somebody going way back, the Brooklyn Dodgers, and then somebody wanted the Yankees. Okay, so I wanted the Yankees to win. Somehow I wanted the Yankees to win then. Who knows why Yankees or why this? I didn't know who these people were. Oh, I know. I met I met Yogi Berra one time, so then I like the Yankees. So they want their team to win. And there's some excitement. Will my team win or lose? And now they already know if the team's going to win or lose, and they're still watching. They already know what's going to happen. I was like bewildered by that because people want to be distracted. People do not want to sit still and deal with the existential issues of life. And therefore, eventually there'll be some depression. And this is what happened with Aditi. A lot of depression and a lot of what I'm seeing nowadays, a huge epidemic that's worse than COVID. COVID is spreading all over. It's getting much worse. Millions of cases, over 1,000 people a day dying. But there's a greater epidemic going on. And I see it in India. I see it here. I see it wherever I go. And the epidemic is called loneliness. Because all of this social media and all of this distraction have driven people to be more disconnected from themselves, their real inner selves, more disconnected from each other. And there is a huge tidal wave of loneliness. And this loneliness does not avoid entering our temples. So, we're getting to the verse eventually, but we're working our way up there. And so here we have Aditi's depressed. When we meet devotees who are lonely, they're experiencing some depression, some separation, something's going on. All of this is simply for one purpose, to give us a chance to become self-reflective, to think, what are we here for? What are our duties? So Aditi begins this chapter wanting, she begins the previous chapter wanting something. Her husband tells her, just be detached. Just simply be detached. You're just going for Griha Medi life. He uses the word, Griha Medi. But that doesn't satisfy her. Then he says, okay, pray to Vishnu. Now, Krishna in the Gita talks about 4 kinds of people who approach him. 1, they're in total material distress. Diti has a piece of that. Her sons are gone. 2, they want something. She wants something. She wants, so your son's back. 3, they're very curious. And 4, and Krishna says these are the most rare. They're wise. So Aditi wants something. So she approaches Vishnu. Now, someone may contend that that's not a very good thing to do. I want something and I approach God for it. Now, is that a good thing to do or not a good thing to do? Does somebody want to comment on that? If somebody likes to comment, they can unmute. Does somebody like to comment on it? Is it a good thing to approach God for your material desires or not? Anybody like to comment? Yeah. Okay, no comment.
I was
Yes.
going to make a comment, Prabhu.
Please.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry. I was just reflecting on in the 7th chapter, also in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says that whatever you do, whatever you offer, whatever you eat, make it as an offering to me. So depending upon the direction a person's going in, if somebody is at least turning towards Krishna, then that's a positive thing for them, because they start to develop that relationship of, I'm dependent on Krishna and Krishna is the provider for me. And you start to develop that dependency towards Krishna. So it can be a good thing for some people.
Well, I asked Prabhupada this directly because I was curious about this. And I said, what if an evil man prays to Krishna? And Prabhupada said, then he's not evil, he's praying to God. So anytime you're recognizing God as a higher authority, that alone is a good spiritual step. Now, it can be quite immature and incomplete. We have a war, and both sides are at war, and they're in, let's say, World War I, where they're in foxholes throwing poison gas at each other. And each side is praying, God, let me be victorious over the other. Now, only one side's going to win, and so the other side might become atheists. So it's an immature approach in that it's not very deep, and that kind of immature faith can easily be lost. But according to Krishna, it is a pious thing to do. You're recognizing a higher authority, but if you don't get what you want, you might give up. It's like I'd given this example of this class before, but it's very much like, it's an appropriate example. It's like Amazon.com. Amazon.com is extremely analogous to religion, because what do? You give your fruits of your work, in this case, your credit card, and you sacrifice it to Amazon. And the next day at your doorstep, you get your new vacuum cleaner. It all comes. And of course, a lot of religious experiences like that. I go to the church or temple, do my pious activities, and I get my reward. It's like a big Amazon.com. That's not to be considered impious. It's to be considered incomplete. It's recognizing a higher authority, but not going deeper. So Kashyapa tried to get his wife just to surrender, but she couldn't. So then he did, as Krishna does in the 12th chapter of Gita. Krishna says, if you can't surrender everything to me, eventually, then give your intelligence. You can't give your intelligence, Krishna says, then at least give the fruit of your work. But better you surrender everything. But if you can't do it, then he gives a sequence of things to do. So first Kashyapa tried, okay, surrender to Krishna, everything's fine. Oh, just not at that place. Okay, then do this. Okay, I can do that. And then she offers these most amazing, beautiful prayers, does great austerities and sacrifices. And of course, all this is a Lord's plan so he can appear as Vamandev. So we're going to go to verse 17, I think I begin at. And I am going to ask someone to read the Sanskrit and read the verses through 23 in English for me.
Read the Sanskrit here.
Just the Sanskrit on the first verse.
Atapi upaya mama devi chintya santoshitasya vratacharayate mamarchanam narhati kantumam yatha shradha nurupam phalahetukatvat. And then the English?
Yes.
Translation. Yet because I have been satisfied by the activities of your vow, O goddess Aditi, I must find some means to favor you, for worship of me never goes in vain, but certainly gives the desired result according to what one deserves. Text 18. You have prayed to me and properly worshipped me by performing the great Payovrata ceremony for the sake of protecting your sons. Because of Kashyap Muni's austerities, I shall agree to become your son and thus protect your other sons. Text 19. Always think of me as being situated within the body of your husband, Kashyap. Kashyap, go worship your husband who has been purified by his austerity. Text 20. O lady, even if someone inquires, you should not disclose this fact to anyone. That which is very confidential is successful if kept secret. Text 21. Shukadeva Goswami said, after speaking in this way, the Supreme Personality of God had disappeared from that very spot. Aditi, having received the extremely valuable benediction that the Lord would appear as her son, considered herself very successful, and with great devotion she approached her husband. Text 22. Being situated in a meditational trance, Kashyapa Muni, whose vision is never mistaken, could see that a plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead had entered within him. Text 23. O king, as the wind promotes friction between two pieces of wood and thus gives rise to fire, Kashyapa Muni, whose transcendental position was fully absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transferred his potency into the womb of Aditi.
Okay, and now read the third paragraph of the purport, please.
Third paragraph of purport. Here it may also be appropriate to explain. In these days of controversy, the origin of light. Here it may also be appropriate to explain, in these days of controversy, the origin of life. The life force of the living entity, the soul, is different from the ovum and semen of the human being. Although the conditioned soul has nothing to do with the reproductive cells of man and woman, he is placed into the proper situation because of his work, karmanya daiva netrena. Life is not, however, a product of two secretions, but is independent of all material elements. As fully described in Bhagavad Gita, the living entity is not subject to any material reactions. He can neither be burnt by fire, cut by sharp weapons, moistened by water, nor dried by the air. He is completely different from the physical elements, but by a superior arrangement, he is put into these material elements. He is always aloof from material contact, asango hyayam purusha. But because he is placed in the material condition, he suffers the reactions of the material modes of nature. Purusha prakritisto hi bhunkte prakrijan gunan karanam guna sangosya sad asad yoni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil amongst various species, Bhagavad Gita 13:22. Although the living entity is aloof from the material elements, he is put into material conditions, and thus he must suffer the reactions of material activities.
Okay, and we can turn the screen off now. So, so to summarize, what's happening here is Aditi's depressed. Her husband gives her one choice. She just can't surrender to it. He gives her another choice. She does that and prays, does all kinds of purification and austerities. And then the Supreme Personality of Godhead agrees to appear. And the Prabhupada says in the first paragraph, we didn't read the purport, it should be understood the union of Kashyapa and Aditi was not like the sexual intercourse of human beings. This has nothing to do with the secretions of sexual intercourse. It's completely aloof from material considerations. And the Lord appeared and Aditi became very satisfied. So what is the solution to depression? The solution to depression is simply to find at what level can we surrender to Krishna. If we can't surrender everything to Krishna, as in the 12th chapter of the Gita, maybe our intelligence can't do that. Maybe the fruit of our work, if we can't give it to Krishna, give it away to someone, but somehow develop some level of detachment. Because Prabhupada said, and I counted, over 150 times. Now, when Prabhupada says something 150 times, let's start taking it extremely seriously. It says over 150 times that this is a gradual process. So it's a gradual process. So the solution to depression is always add more Krishna in a way that is practical and that accessible to us. And how do we add more Krishna? Sometimes Krishna in our heart will tell us what to do. Sometimes we approach our mentors, our friends. We reveal our mind in confidence. And in 2 verses before, it says that which is very confidential is successful, kept secret. So one way of making progress spiritual life is to reveal our mind in confidence. There used to be an old saying back before there were smartphones, telephone, telegraph, and teledevotee. And teledevotee was faster. So that meant confidence was not kept. And one time I was at I won't say where or who, but I was at a meeting. It was a zonal meeting, and Rita Anandamaharaj was there, and Jayapataka Swami was there. This was back maybe in the, it was back in the 80s, and our zonal leaders were there, and I think Balavanta was there. So we're all having a meeting in a room and discussing, making some tough decisions on should we increase our farm project or withdraw from our farm project? What would Prabhupada want us to do? So we're all discussing very confidentially among ourselves. And then somebody went to open the door, which you pull in to see, to go to step out for a moment. And when they opened the door, there was one devotee leaning against the door, listening in. It fell into the room. So that meant we couldn't have our confidential talk and reveal our mind. So confidentiality is mentioned as one of the keys for spiritual life that we can. Why does confidentiality work? Because when we revealing our mind confidentially, none of us feel we're being judged. For any of you who have never listened to one of my favorite lecture series is Rabindra Swarup Prabhu's Cure of Souls, in which he gets into great detail, brilliantly presented. I mean, so well done, of really how a devotee can reveal their mind without being judged. And so that's some of what's going on here behind the scenes. I realize there's such a variety of topics. And so here, I may be bouncing around a little, but this section of the Bhagavatam, we could speak on for months, not just 45 minutes. I will make one final point, though, that's very important and very important personally to me. Because here, Prabhupada is saying the life force of the living entity, the soul, is different. And he says, in these days, it may be appropriate to explain these days of controversy, the origin of life. Now, I'm with the Bhaktivedanta Institute. I'm serving as director. Your Murli Gopal, of course, works closely with us. And our mission is to establish what? That life comes from life. That was the conference we had in October 1977 in Vrindavan. And that life comes from life. It doesn't come from matter. In that regard, I will share with you, our BI now has a new headquarters in Gainesville, Florida. I'm showing it to you. This was donated to us. It used to be the president's house for the university, a mile from the university, and that's our new headquarters for the Bhaktivedanta Institute. So it was one of the projects in Prabhupada's last year he emphasized is very important, simply to fulfill what the purport of this verse is saying, which is deal with the controversy of what is the origin of life. Can we demonstrate both philosophically and scientifically that life does not come from matter? Now, I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger and not tell you if life comes from matter or not. I'll let you think about that or ask questions. So with that, I'm going to stop here. And I've covered maybe too many topics. So it's a good time to leave at least 7 minutes for questions and see what interests you and what you can give me your reflections. You can give a comment. You can give a critique. But, thank you for posting Cure of Souls, which every devotee must listen to. You can't not listen to it. It's so necessary for our spiritual progress. So with that, I will stop here and see if there are any questions comments, criticisms, and especially reflections. I believe you all have the authority to unmute yourselves. So unmute yourself if you like and say something or not say something.
Hare Krishna and Brahma Tirtha Prabhu.
Yes,
Thanks for the wonderful presentation. I have a question.
yes.
You made this wonderful point how the devotees, they add more Krishna. And me personally, and some other devotees that I know, it seems we've added more politics to our life lately with this whole standoff between the two sides. What was Prabhupada's take on such topics as politics,
That is,
especially in terms of
yeah.
devotees siding with one party or another?
That is a very smart question. And Prabhupada, like on most things, never gave a black and white answer. Few things are black and white. I mean, actually, I can hardly think of anything as 100% black and white. One devotee was sent off to Poland during the Cold War. Somehow the consulate general's wife came to Artik in Calcutta. And when Prabhupada saw a Western woman dancing at Artik, he said, "Who is that?" And it was the Polish consulate general's wife. And he said, "This will get us behind the Iron Curtain." So he sent a crew of devotees to Poland in the middle of the Cold War, Americans, and they got visas to go. And they came back emaciated, because there was nothing to eat except meat in the winter in Poland, unless you were very wealthy. So they had some nuts, a little of this. There was just hardly anything to eat. And Prabhupada said, "What happened to you?" He said, "Well, Prabhupada, we're preaching, but there's hardly anything to eat. I mean, it's really terrible, except for meat." And Prabhupada said, "Then eat meat." Not that Prabhupada intended him to eat meat, but he was making a point, because the devotee who told me the story. So it's clear Prabhupada didn't intend that. He said, "Eat meat." And the devotee said, "What about my consciousness?" And Prabhupada said, "Damn your consciousness, preach." So nothing is black and white. Everything is nuanced. And the most dangerous thing, one very senior devotee said to me, I said, "What's the most dangerous thing in the Krishna conscious movement?" And he immediately blurted out, "Prabhupada says," because there's no nuance. It's just, he says this, he says that. It's like, Bible thumpers. Bible thumpers they used to go around these Bible preachers, and they take their Bible and they thump it on the table and they bang it. "And Jesus says this, you're all going to hell, and it's a one-way ticket." And they bang the Bibles. They call them Bible thumpers. We don't want to be Gita thumpers. We want to be intelligent, nuanced thinking. So now to get to a specific question on politics. You cannot live in America and not know that we had an election, that there's an extreme amount of controversy. And when Prabhupada was in India and Indira Gandhi was sterilizing Brahmins, he was very upset by it. He said, "This is not a good behavior for a leader." So when the leaders misbehaved, he would comment, "This is not good behavior." When a leader behaved well, he might comment, "This is good behavior." So Prabhupada was not unaware of these things. As devotees, if we're on the street and somebody walks up to us and says, "Well, what do you think? Do you like Biden or do you like the other guy?" Okay, I'm revealing a little prejudice here by referring to him as the other guy. Anyway, but you like Biden or the other guy? And if we say, "Who are these people?" we're going to appear as ignoramuses. And then that's one danger. The other danger is getting totally absorbed in it. I was sitting with a dear friend of mine recently, who's the chairman of the Democratic Party of my county. He's not a devotee, but he's a dear friend. And his wife had just died, so I've been visiting him a very kind of goodness kind of person. So he asked me, well, what do you think of the national politics? And I summed it up, and he said he 100% agreed with me. Republicans are mean and Democrats are stupid. And it's a little flippant. I accept that. But there's a reason why Democrats, won the White House, and there's a reason why they lost a lot of the other elections. And so there are some devotees who are very competent for politics and can get into it. Prabhupada informed the God We Trust party. He disbanded when devotees got into it too much, because our real business is to understand that Krishna is in control, not us. And we're really trying to understand what Krishna's desires are, what Krishna wants to happen. At the same time, we're in this world and we can't be ignoramuses. So devotees who too much get into one side or the other, it's like a cell phone or social media becomes a distraction from Krishna. And in my opinion, and seeing how Prabhupada dealt with it is very dangerous for their spiritual life. Devotees who are pujaris in a temple and they're just worshiping deities, have no idea who's running for president. Bless your heart. Wish I could live your life too. But the devotees who are out mixing with the world and have no idea what's going on, they're not going to be very effective in this world. So we have to take the middle road here. Krishna says in the Gita, don't eat too much, don't eat too little. Don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little. So don't be a total ignoramus of what's going on in the world, but be detached from it and don't get involved in it. Don't over get involved. And devotees who over get involved in it invariably lose their Krishna consciousness. I saw one devotee wearing a hat. He got over into it, and the hat was, let's make ISKCON great again. And he's wearing this silly hat, and then he's getting totally involved in criticizing everyone, because the people who support the guy who said, let's make America great, tend to be extremely critical of others. And so he started criticizing everybody while he's wearing a hat. Let's make ISKCON great. How do you make ISKCON great when you're criticizing all your God brothers and everybody else? So being overly immersed is quite dangerous. We live in America. I think maybe some of the overseas people here, not to be concerned about the future of your country would be callous. Prabhupada was concerned when Indira Gandhi was messing certain things up, and he spoke about it. He was concerned when other leaders messed things up. He was concerned about it, but it wasn't his main concern. His main concern was how to bring us all closer to Krishna, but he was aware of these things. So I hope that answers your question. I don't know if we have time for another question or not. I know the deities have just opened.
If others have questions, we can take, Prabhu. The darshan.
Okay, thank you, Gaurasharna. So if there's another question, I am all ears.
I had a question, Prabhu. If it's okay.
Yes.
I really appreciate the bringing up the depression and kind of mental health in general. It's a growing topic, I think, in the world today. And
Yes.
I wanted to know your input on the biological aspect of depression, that some people see it just as like as a disease. And so there's the one aspect of, as you're mentioning, adding Krishna into your life, or adding more Krishna, or kind of like that, like kind of inner willpower to kind of overcome that. Do you also feel in your experience or any research you've done that there is also, for some people, a biological aspect that simply requires medical attention the way like a physical illness would?
It's an insightful question, Doyal Prabhu, and that question really needs to be discussed. One time, Hari K. Swami was Prabhupada's secretary. And it was in New Orleans, and I was there, and he was very, very sick. And cold kind of thing. So I brought him the usual things, orange juice, whatever herbs we would take in that generation for being sick. And then a month later, I was in Denver. Again, Prabhupada was there. And I saw him and I said, "Well, how are you feeling?" He says, "I'm better." I said, "What happened?" He said, "Prabhupada said, you have a Western body." He said, "Go to the doctor and whatever they give you, take it." And they gave him some antibiotics and he was better the next day. Now, when I was living in Mayapur, not as a devotee, I was the only visitor at the first Mayapur festival. So 70 devotees and one victim. One visitor. And and I've explained before, that's why Prabhupada kept me in his Bhajan Kutir all day for protection. So I had caught a cold, whatever, minor thing. So I had some normal over-the-counter cold medicine, equivalent of Alka-Seltz or whatever we take. So one devotee preached to me, "So heavy, you can't take it, only Ayurvedic. Otherwise, you're killing yourself." The next devotee walks up to me, says, "I heard you have some medicine. I have a cold. Can I have some?" I mean, if you want to, that was quite a moment. And Krishna says on the healing herb. And so some devotees think, well, you can't take anything allopathic. Devotees have two religions, one based on extremely scientific rigor and the other based on blind faith. The one on extreme scientific rigor is worshiping Krishna, because we can demonstrate a lot of science there. The one that's blind faith is nothing ever allopathic. That's blind faith. I mean, what's aspirin but a bark of a tree? I mean, is the pharmaceutical industry a bunch of cheaters? You'd have to be an idiot not to recognize that. Are there medicines that do miracles and work? You'd have to be an idiot not to accept that also. I mean, if I go to India and I get malaria, I'm going to get some medicine. I remember when I was first in India, first day there, in a fit of stupidity, I took some sugarcane juice from the street, not knowing better. Well, after that, we had what we used to call then Delhi belly. And because I was working for the government, so they gave me as a medicine paregoric. You know what paregoric is? It's opium dissolved in alcohol. On babies teething, you put it on their gums, stop the pain. So there it is. The Peace Corps had given me such a lecture about getting stoned. And the first medicine they give me is paregoric. So my first week, I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea what it was. I was in the opium days. Finally, I just went to a doctor and he gave me one pill of Cipro, and in 10 minutes I was cured. Now you tell me which is more Krishna conscious, to take the natural cure, which was and be out of my mind for a week, or take one pill and be completely cured in 10 minutes. So if somebody, I've been beating around the bush, Doyle. If somebody has some difficulty with their liver, there's certain medicines you take. It may be herbs, it may be allopathic. Somebody's diabetic, they can take metformin, and they can also take cinnamon and alpha lipoic acid and all the other things that help. And different bodies will take different things in different cultures at different times. So a diabetic might take bitter melon. Someone with jaundice will take sugar candy, though it doesn't taste good. One man's food can be another man's poison. Somebody with diabetes, that same sugar candy is poison. So it all depends. So similarly, if somebody has something with the mind, they have a serotonin uptake problem, they may need to take some kind of serotonin-inducing drug. They may need to take a dopamine-inducing drug. Nowadays, it's very hard because the pharmaceutical industry wants to make money. some doctors want to make us better. It's really hard to figure it out. And we just have to use our best intelligence and do the best thing, but not have a prejudice against it. I know many devotees who need to take, one of my best friends is a devotee psychiatrist. And we talk about this. And he's treated many people, cured many devotees who are even senior people who are in a funk. A wonderful, wonderful devotee. And so we've had many talks on this. And he said, sometimes you just need some of these medicines. They work and it's going to do the job. And so it's a matter of utility is the principle. There's no principle we should or should not be taking an allopathic medicine. The general principle is avoid any medicine you don't need. That's a general principle. But when Aditi was depressed, nowadays the first thing we do is give Prozac, or with the modern equivalents of it. And maybe if it wasn't a simple matter of some spiritual issue that had to be resolved, under other circumstances, I could see Aditi going to the local Ayurvedic doctors and getting the herbs, which would be the equivalent of the modern medicines. So it's both. But anytime we're depressed, anytime we're sad, anytime we're miserable, we may need some outside medicine. We may need some talk therapy to help us. We all do that. We may just need friends, but we always, always need more Krishna. So it's both. It's not either or. And anybody, and I'll say this boldly, anybody who tells you when you're having difficulty, all you need is more Krishna, has not read the Bhagavatam very carefully. Because here, Aditi is coming, Kashyapa is coming and saying, all you need is more Krishna and be detached. You can't do it. Okay, let's try this instead. So we have to be like Batman. Okay, now what do I mean by that? All of you who've heard about Batman, now I know about him because I was a kid. I used to read Batman comics. He had a utility belt, and on his utility belt, he had a batarang, a bat boomerang, if I remember. I don't remember what else he had. All he had all his bat tools, and he would choose the right tool for the right occasion. So we all have to be Batmans in Krishna's service and have multiple tools on our utility belt and use the right one for the right occasion. And for that, we have to be Krishna conscious to pick the right tool. And if we're not Krishna conscious enough to pick the right tool, then we approach somebody who is Krishna conscious enough and say, what tool do I need to use? And we approach them confidentially, and we approach somebody who will have our welfare in mind. When I approached Prabhupada, what made me so attracted to Prabhupada is he had my welfare in mind. And it became clear and obvious. So if we have other people's welfare in mind, then we will present what they need for their particular circumstances. And when we don't know, somebody approaches me, happens most every day, because I've been around a long time, so people think I must know something. Little do they know. But anyway, people think I know. So what happens when they approach me? I sit there and I pray to Krishna, oh, Krishna, please give me a brain so I can help this person. And I can only, anytime I succeed, because I'm asking Krishna, please give me a brain. I know, I don't know. Okay, with that, I think is it time, Gaurasharna? You keep track of these things. I don't.
If anybody else has some questions, we can go on, Prabhu. However, like if you have also some time to spare.
Okay.
And also, I see many devotees are requesting for more classes by you. So I'm just pitching it now. When I come to you, you know why I'm coming to you.
Oh, God, I'll have to come up with more jokes. That's hard. I need a speechwriter. Okay. Oh, that it's a pleasure seeing all of you who made it out of your pajamas in time to turn on your camera, and very happy. I wish I could physically be at the Bhakti Center, but I must say COVID has been cruel and kind. Cruel, and I've lost so many people have suffered. I've lost some good friends, including the great saint Bhakti True Swami, and kind in that the movement became very frenetic. We're all working so hard that many leaders tell me they've been on airplanes every 2 weeks. I was typically on an airplane every 2 weeks. And now that we're sitting in one spot, we can contemplate a little more. And I've never heard more classes in my life. I've never given more classes in my life. So COVID has forced the movement to enter the digital age, which, you know, we tend to be $1 short and a day late in what we do. So it helped us catch up to the world and use the technology in Krishna's service. And it's helped us all sit down and be more contemplative. And what could be better for us? So with that, I'll stop here. Thank you all very much. I want to acknowledge just people I know on the class. We have Genevieve Harrison here, one of my most favorite singers and speakers on the planet. And I see my friend Shraddha here. Remind Rabindra, I'm waiting for Cure of Souls. Of course, I see all my buddies from the Bhakti Center and Adi and Doyle Garanga and Gaura Sharana. And and my wife is listening too. Hari Bal, I love you. Okay, so give greetings there. And maybe, I'm sure I've missed people I know at all of this, but I just want to say thank you. It's an honor and a superb privilege to be at the Bhakti Center. And please continue all your service. I saw Murli Gopal here before. Soon, I showed you that picture. He'll be joining us as our senior researcher at the Bhaktivedanta Institute's new amazing headquarters in Gainesville, Florida. With that, we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.